guys.
So hey y'all, hey friend, hey girl, guess what? I'm back on your screen with part 2 of my son cancer story. So I already given you all part 1. That's when my son was 9 years old and the demon of cancer attached itself to my son in his eye. So after the chemo of the first time of him having cancer, we had to do doctor visits every 2 months. They was doing scans of his brain, his heart, all of his organs. They was just doing tests on all that to make sure it didn't come back, because they said that kind of cancer spreads to all of the organs. So let me start with this. I don't know if I mentioned it in the last video. The doctors told me that this cancer that my son had spread, and if it did spread, that it would come back in the bone, either here or in the leg, which it did. 6 years later, we had an appointment for him to go into surgery to get his port removed. We thought we had passed the so-called 5-year mark of, you know, the cancer not returning. He was now 15 years old. We never got a chance to have the surgery because my son was complaining of arm pain, and they did an x-ray on his arm, and come to find out my son again has cancer, and this time it was called osteosarcoma. The tumor was so big, it was from here to here. My son now has a rod in his arm that comes from here to here, so he will never be able to like lift his arm up anymore because of the rod that had to be placed in his arm. So now we find out that he have cancer again. Oh my God, what another devastating blow to our hearts and to our family. Kendrick again had to go through extensive amount of chemo. Oh my God, it was so bad. I thought the first time was bad. This time was bad as well for his chemo. Kendrick was really sick. Again, he lost all of his hair. Again, the same routine. He was admitted every Thursday and released on Monday. This battle here, it was just as worse as the first time. He missed a lot of school, but again, like I said, they were there for him, and he didn't have a tutor this time, but they did provide the homework for him, you know, or work for him to do outside of the classroom that I was responsible for this time, getting and making sure it get back to the school. And so Kendrick went into surgery. Surgery was about 13 hours long. The worst day of my life. The worst day of my life. Those were the longest 13 hours I ever had to endure. You know, because any kind of surgery, you know, sometimes things can just go wrong when you enter into surgery. So we laying around for this 13 hours. They put us in the most comfortable room there was. You know, it was like a family room. They had like a bed in there. They had a couch in there. They had chairs in the room. I'm gonna fast forward this story. So they do the surgery, and I would never, when I say I will never ever forget, the surgeon, Dr. Greenberg, came walking through the doors. Oh my God. And I promise you, it was as if like, how can I say this? Like the Holy Spirit was carrying this doctor. I can't make it up. It was like he was floating, walking toward me. And oh my God, he had the biggest smile on his face. And in that moment, you know, I'm sitting there, I'm crying, you know, I'm worried about my son, but this doctor comes back out smiling, and I'm like, oh my God, he was smiling so hard. So he come in, he make it to the room, and he lets me know that the surgery was a success. The reason his smile was so big, you all, is because this surgery that Kendrick had is a major surgery, and the doctors has never, God is so good. Doctors has never ever been able to save the nerves in the hand with that type of surgery. Oh my God. Hold on. Man, tell me God is not good. I know my son had to go through that, and I know my son had to have that surgery, and I know my son could never do that, but my son was still able to move his fingers. Like, he was still able to move his fingers. Oh my God. And, whew, hold on. Hold on. I'm not crying. I'm not crying. Hold on. So yeah, like I said, they was able to save the nerves in my son's fingers. Like, can you imagine that? Like, God showed up. And I remember praying. I just remember asking God, you know, just to show up in the operating room. I asked him to work through the hands of the surgeon and work through the hands of whoever else was in there assisting him doing the surgery. Like, I asked you to be with the nurses, oh Father God. I asked you to help them to make the best decision for my son while in that room. Oh my God, did God answer a prayer for me? Yes, he did. He answered the prayers for me. And I promise you, he sent that doctor back to me walking like he was floating toward me. I cannot make none of this up. I cannot make none of this up. I promise you. And so he gave us the good news. We had to wait an hour after the surgery, of course, until he recovered. He had a little hard time coming out of recovery this time, but they still end up letting us back there to see him. Other than that, Kendrick came out of that just like he came out the first time. God brought him out the first time, and God brought him out the second time. After that little mishap with him having problems waking up or whatever, once they did the surgery, again, he had to do his chemo. And the same routine, which I had already said before I told the story of him having the surgery, you know, he had to be admitted every Thursday. So yeah, Kendrick go through his chemo, you know, like a champ. He did it like a champ. My baby is a survivor. He is more than a conqueror. He beat the demon of cancer for the second time. Beat it with a stick. Do you hear me? God is good. Yeah. So now we with this battle the second time around. My son done lost his eye. My son done lost use of his arm. I'm like, oh my God, like what more can my baby take? Like, he can't take no more. Like, I can't take no more. And this time around, it was hard. It had started working on me mentally. It had started working on me mentally, not to the point where I was just ready to like give up, but it was hard. It was something in the travel that just broke me every single time, you know, because I was going back and forth to the hospital. It was just a bit much, you know, because now Princess was getting older and it was just hard. I don't know why this time around was harder, you know, being a mother and still trying to work. I don't know why this time around was hard. And by this time, I'm heavy in church. I was just losing all the faith. Like, I really had no faith because I still could not understand why this demon had to attach itself to my son for a second time. Like, I could not understand why this would happen to my baby boy again. We all had the same routine. We would go to the hospital after work and school and spend time with him, and we'll go home, we'll go to bed, and we get back up and we repeat this and we repeat this and we repeat this. I think he did 9 months of chemo this time around. Now here we are with another new normal for us, a new normal for my son. My son had to train himself to see one eye. My son had to retrain himself to work with just one arm. Oh my God, like what more can he take? What more can I take? It was so hard. Now that I'm talking about this, I think I'm gonna go ahead and enter part 3 in this video too, because I don't think this one may be too long. I don't know, I'll see. In between chemo, I was still having doctor's appointments. It wasn't until after we were done with chemo that we would have those visits every 2 months to make sure the cancer hadn't came back. So in between chemo, I was still having doctor's appointments. They were still running different tests. I spent so much time in Cardinal Glennon Children's Hospital. Everyone knew me. And when they see us now, they just love on us because we've been there for so many years dealing with this. We spent a lot of time in that hospital. The weekly doctor's appointments, and with him being admitted, going back and forth, traveling, they had got to the point I had started to have to take off of work a lot. It was a hardship on me financially, but I was still able to maintain. God kept me, didn't let me go by the wayside. You know, I didn't lose too much. God kept me. You know, that's what his word, he said he would never leave or forsake you. He provided. It was emotional, but not like the first time and not like the third time. And so get done with the chemo and everything. So again, we back to our 2 months appointment every 2 months. We was going every 2 months, making sure everything was okay. And 2 years later, we didn't even make it to the 5-year mark. 2 years later, that demon showed up again in my son. So now my son is 17 years old, and it never fails. It was always around December that this demon attached itself to my son. This time it came in the leg. So he had it in the femur and the humerus. Always seemed to show up around the holidays. I'll never forget, it was 3 days before Christmas, and I was in a bathroom. I'm always in the bathroom in the mirror. I was in the bathroom combing my hair, and my son walked up to the door and said, "Mom, my leg hurt." This demon has shown up yet again. This time around was the hardest on everyone. On me, my son that's in the Navy, Dad. This is when Dad cried. Dad cried this time around. So I took him to the emergency room because this demon was always associated with pain. So I took him to the emergency room. They kept my son because, again, they found this demon in the bone in his leg. And this time around, Kendrick had to get chemo surgery, then chemo again. So we did chemo. We got through that first round of chemo, and then they scheduled him to have his surgery. He had his surgery, and he ended up having to do chemo again. And so around this time, my son was graduating from boot camp, and we was due to be in Chicago, you know, be there for my son. My son called home, and we had to tell him that, you know, his brother may not be able to make it. Now, I did initially tell my son because I just didn't want him to have to be worried about anything. But when he called home and was asking, you know, who all come, is his brother's coming, and y'all, I had to break down and tell my son that his brother may not be able to make it because of the travel. He had the surgery. He was in a wheelchair. He couldn't put any pressure on the leg. So, but anyway, I ended up telling my son, y'all, and when I say my son broke down, that was the first time I've seen him cry so hard. The second time is when my mommy passed away, and he cried so hard for so long, and each time I had to give my son devastating news, it was over the phone, and I just had to sit there and hold the phone and let my son cry. I had to tell him about my son over the phone. I had to tell him about my mommy over the phone. And each time I just held the phone, he cried so hard. He cried, that broke me down. Both now crying on the phone to each other. But we were able to get my son there because my ex-husband rented a van so he can have room in the back to stretch his leg out. And they gave him his chemo early so that we can get up there and be with my son as a family. So they did us that favor, gave him his chemo early. We had to be back in time. He had a doctor's appointment when we were due to come back and to get admitted for the chemo. But this time around, like I said, it was hard on everyone. Now, by this time, with my son being sick, not only was I dealing with my son being sick with cancer, I was also dealing with mom going back and forth to the hospital. This was before we found out that she even had cancer, and mom was always in the hospital. Mom had to get intubated. She was in the hospital for like almost 2 months. So I'm going up and down the highway to see Bubba, then I'm going down the highway to see mom, even though the hospitals wasn't too far from each other. But I would leave one hospital and go to the next to see both of them, and it was hard, you know, trying to divide my love between the both of them, my son and my mom. So again, like I said, you know, I'm dividing my time between the both of them, trying to spend time with them, trying to still be a mommy, you know. At this time, I'm still cooking. So I'm still trying to cook for those that's still at home and be a mommy, go back and forth to the hospital, juggling work and trying to be a mommy and spend time at the hospital with Bubba and spend time at the hospital with my mommy. My mommy was so sick, and I believe mommy had cancer then. Either she didn't tell me or they didn't check for her. I don't know. I think mom knew. I could be wrong. Mom intubated on the machine that was breathing for her, and I got Kendrick over here in the hospital that's sick, getting chemo. He was so sick this time around. My son couldn't eat anything, especially from the hospital. And when he was able to eat, we had to get it from the outside, and we will always get him some chicken wings from Rally's. That was the only thing he was able to stomach, and sometimes he wasn't even able to stomach that. This time around, I had a lot of help. It was days that Gail would come home. I forget the name of them shots I had to stick in his leg 24 hours after chemo. I didn't have the heart to do it, so I used to have to call Gail, and she would come home on her lunch break there or after she got off from work to give him that shot. His auntie would go and spend time with him. She would cook for him because she knew he wasn't eating. My son was so little, so skinny, so skinny. And she would spend time with him. Even mommy, when mommy got out the hospital, mommy would go over there and spend time with him, and sometimes she would come while we were there to see him. And she had got strong and stuff and back on her feet. Dad, he had told me, Charnell, you stay back. You stay back, because even though he was dealing with the same thing I was dealing with, because that was our son, but he knew I have been there since day one. He was like, you stay back and I'll be with him this time. So I would take Kendrick to get admitted on Thursday, and Dad would spend nights with him, stay there until he got released so I can stay home. Some days I didn't visit him, and some I would, because like I said, when Dad was there, I'll just spend time with mommy at the hospital. So I was very thankful and grateful that Dad did it, because I told y'all the second time it had started working on me mentally, but this time it really was affecting me mentally. And you know, no one really know this, no one but Dad and mommy, but I end up going to the hospital myself, and then I end up getting on, you know, Xanax and stuff. That was my first time ever getting Xanax. And then here last year, last year, I ended up getting back on them. Yeah, because it was just turn me up. It was turn me up. And I felt like the church had turned their back on me. I just felt that way. It was like they would never come visit or pray for them or whatever. And that was kind of breaking my heart. You know, I've been in this church now almost 11 years. Like, I felt like I needed y'all, you know. But anyway, that's neither here or there, girl, because I don't care now. That was my feelings then. Dad was A1. The whole year he was there with Kendrick. Every time he got admitted, he spent the night with him. Every single time. Every single time. Some days he would even take Princess with him, and they would spend the night at the hospital. And some nights all the boys would stay. And I was at home, and I was just able to, you know, breathe and try to take care of myself, you know, and kind of like relax, because I was just all over the place. Because like I said, it was something in the travel that just threw me over. That drive, it was just something that just threw me over. It was something in the travel. But yeah, like I said, this time it was just hard on everybody. And so now he have his surgery. So now Kendrick, he will never be able to run or bend. You know, he could just walk. So now, you know, we all going through. Dad had made a statement. He was like, oh my God, like he has to live a straight and narrow life. Like if something should happen, like he can never run. Dad was like, he need to get a gun. That was just his thought process. And it really is like, you know, my son won't be able to protect himself out there in them streets if he had to. Yeah, that was their thought process. So like I said, it was really hard. Now my baby eye is gone. Now his arm is just limited, and now his gait, his walk is limited. He went through a lot of chemo. Like I said, he had to do chemo before surgery and after surgery. But my son did it. Again, this time he missed a lot of school. So now my son is senior in high school, and he was missing a lot of days, but he didn't even miss a beat. You wouldn't even know that my son missed so much school, and by the grace of God, don't look at my eyes, they red as I don't know what. And by the grace of God, my son was still able to walk across the stage. He wasn't pushed in a wheelchair. He walked across the stage and got his diploma. Ooh, girl, I ain't got nothing else to wipe my tears. I'm gonna use this scarf. Oh my God. Girl, I'm gonna end this video. This is ridiculous. I'm gonna end this video, but anyway, we went through all of that. Kendrick walked across the stage and got his diploma, and Kendrick is 21 now. He finished his last round of chemo at age 18. Kendrick just turned 21 this year, June. So he was still having his doctor's appointment, and it had got to the point where we went from every 2 months to every 4 months, every 6 months. And then our last visit, it became every year, which is disappointment. We had just went to, and they didn't see him because he didn't have his insurance. I'm still believing God that my son is okay. He hasn't had any pain, and he's doing great. He's doing wonderful. He's thriving. And yeah, that's it. 3 battles of cancer, honey, and my son beat all 3 of them, kicked them all in the butt, girl. God is amazing. He is a healer, baby. Yes, he is, baby. He will touch. I'm gonna take this moment while I'm smiling, you know, to go ahead and end this. Like I said, Kendrick graduated. He has yet to do anything else for schooling, but I'm in the process. Y'all know I talked about it. We're trying to figure out what he can do in life, because like I said, he can never use his arm, his leg, you know, he's just limited. But he don't let none of that stop him. My son still does what he do. And he's a great help to me. He helps me a lot with Princess. He is like an angel. He is a special guy. I always pray for all of my sons that their wives is out there, and you know that God sent them a good wholesome woman. And I know there's a woman out there that's gonna love my son. I know his wife out there, and I know his career is out there. And yeah, I just want something other than these 4 walls for my baby, because that's all he know. I promise you, he hasn't even never been to a party. He has never been anywhere for real. All he know is the 4 walls at the hospital and the 4 walls here at home. And I just want him to get his life. So with that being said, I'm in the process of working on that. You know, we're looking into some things. I know what we need to do for KK, but we need to figure out what Bubba can do. And let me tell y'all something about them fingers. And I believe God saved those fingers, y'all, because let me tell y'all something about my son. Kendrick can draw his butt off. He drew a portrait of himself. I'm going to insert some pictures here. He has drawings in the ceiling at the hospital where he drew for the hospital. Kendrick can draw me sitting here talking to this camera. He can draw. His fingers were saved, and I thank God for that. That's his gift. Kendrick is gifted. He can draw. And you know, I've been trying to talk to him about going to school for some type of graphic design or something like that. But I don't think that's where his heart is. His heart is cooking. He still listens to me, and I feel bad. I was like, no, I don't know about cooking. I don't know if that's a career. I really don't know what I'm talking about. So he kind of stayed away from that. But every time I mention something he should do, it's like it's not where his heart is. So I'm gonna talk to him again actually when I'm done recording this video, and see if he still want to go to cooking school, because I was always thinking about those heavy pots and pans, you know, him not being able to lift. But he cooks here, so I don't know what I'm talking about. So but anyway, girl, I ain't talking about nothing. I ain't talking about nothing, y'all. So look, listen, I'm gonna go ahead and end this because I'm done crying. I did not put this foundation on and these lashes on to mess it up. I just didn't. So look, listen, y'all, the lady is getting ready to get off from work. I'm gonna go ahead and end this vlog, y'all. So I'll see y'all when I turn this camera back on. So until next time, until the next video, bye bye.
Let's rock, let's rock.
Can you rock for me?